Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our Learn to Hunt Rabbits program. This webinar will be about 1 hour in length and will be followed by a Q&A session and is being recorded. Before we get started, can everybody hear us? If you can, please type yes or let us know in the chat box or give us a thumbs up. I'm seeing yeses come in. That is great. Okay, and the majority of you are using the chat box. At any point in time during this presentation, if you have a question, feel free to type it into the chat box. We may not be able to get to it right at that moment, but we will try to get to your questions at the end. If we don't get to your question, no worries. We will be sending an email out afterwards with answers to questions, a link to the recording, and some additional resources that we think might be helpful for you. With us today, we have Emily Boyd, who is our small game mammal wildlife biologist. We also have Peyton Miller, who is our hunter education management technician, and we have Travis Lau, who's our communications director. These three individuals are going to help lead our program today. So here we go.
All right, so great. So we'll get started with just generally why would somebody decide to hunt rabbits? People hunt anything for a variety of reasons, harvesting their own food, having a connection with nature, and spending time with family. Rabbit hunting is a way to spend a lot of time with your family and friends. That's kind of how I got into it. I grew up rabbit hunting in Fulton County and Franklin County with my extended family from my dad's side, who's originally from Franklin County. It was a big tradition in kind of the past down there to rabbit hunt. I still have my great-great-grandfather's 12 gauge. He ran beagles, and we have that shotgun hanging on our wall. So we have always been rabbit hunters. Rabbit hunting is a great way to introduce kids or other beginners to hunting. Sometimes deer hunting, sitting in the stand still for hours in the cold isn't as exciting as traipsing around the woods, shooting at rabbits. So it's definitely a great way to introduce kids and new hunters to hunting. So, do you guys have any reason why you rabbit hunt?
Well, sure. It's hard for me to even put into words all that rabbit hunting has given to me. And I came to rabbit hunting and a relative beginner, a relative novice, had never trained dogs before. Got a beagle. She had a litter of pups, kept two beagles out of that litter, and those are my dogs. My experience training dogs, hunting with dogs is really limited to those dogs. And I've been going for more than a decade now with them. It's given me great satisfaction. It's a lot of fun, especially when you get into the late season in January and February, where there's not nearly as many other hunting options. Rabbit hunting is always there, and the past 2 or 3 years in particular have been really good as far as the number of rabbits that we're encountering, the number of rabbits that we're harvesting. Everything's good. It's like for me, I think I'm in it as much for my dogs as I am for myself. I get a lot of satisfaction out of watching them, but then too, like the sort of every part of the process has its own reward, and it's a great way to get outdoors. Again, where when you're talking about hunting, not a lot else going on in January and particularly February.
Yeah, it's very much similar to what Peyton and Travis have said. Very much in it for the camaraderie, time with family. My dad has always had hunting dogs, and just really marveling at a hunting dog doing its thing, chasing small game and getting outside, moving around. So it's a great time.
So yeah, and Travis briefly touched on it, describing why he gets enjoyment out of rabbit hunting. So our statewide seasons are fairly extensive in the fall and winter months for hunting rabbits. This is these are the seasons printed in your digest. I would look for updated seasons because the Sunday hunting bill was passed, which gave us power to designate Sundays as valid days to hunt. So there's even more opportunity to hunt rabbits now, as opposed to what's in this presentation. But what Travis mentioned and where I normally hunt my rabbits is in that late season, past all the extended rifle seasons in January that we have now in February, where you can still go out there and hunt rabbits long after most of the deer seasons have closed down. So it just extends your opportunity, lengthens your season, and allows you to stay out in the woods and keep hunting. So, as far as bag limits go, it's a 4 rabbits daily maximum bag limit per person. So when you're out there hunting, you can shoot 4, and then you gotta let the others shoot at them. And then 12 total in possession. Possession meaning in your actual, like, whether it be your hunting camp or your vehicle, but you can have a freezer full of rabbits. And so
Sure. I'll just add to that the Hunting and Trapping Digest has been updated with the new Sunday hunting dates. Of course, you can't get that in print form unless you go to the website, download it, and then print yourself a copy. But we have updated that with Sunday hunting. Everything except for migratory game birds that is in season between September 14th, so we're already into our period of Sunday hunting, and December 7th is open for hunting. So all of those rabbit hunting days within that span are open to hunting. Of course, rabbit season does close when the firearms deer season opens. But I think that for my part, that those additional opportunities, I welcome them, and certainly will be out there using them this year.
sure. Yeah, it's yeah, like we said, it's a great chance to get out, and even if you're a diehard deer hunter, that really doesn't affect your ability to hunt rabbits.
All right, how to identify a rabbit? Honestly, it seems maybe to many people, like, why are we even covering this slide? Eastern cottontails are maybe the most familiar mammal species besides deer, I'd say, maybe, in Pennsylvania. But for good of the order, we actually have 3 species of this family Leporidae, including the Eastern cottontail, that common backyard bunny, the one majority of our rabbit hunters are going to be pursuing. But we also have these much more rare and elusive species. The Appalachian cottontail looks very similar to your Eastern cottontail, and also the snowshoe hare. All 3 of these species are going to have your awkward, large ears kind of on top of their head, and also pretty big hind feet. Notably, the snowshoe hare, their hind feet are like disproportionately large for their body size, almost 5 inches long, quite thick fur on the bottom there. You can see the picture in the bottom left, and those feet are really designed to help that animal move quickly across the snow. Certainly body size too between a snowshoe hare and cottontails are going to be different. Your snowshoe hare is almost double the size of a cottontail. Cottontail maybe 2 or 3 pounds, Pennsylvania. Our snowshoe hares actually get upwards of almost 5 pounds, so almost double the size. Also pretty notable as far as what they look like. The cottontail will have that nice white fluffy hair on the back, that cottontail, whereas that's not really as notable certainly on a snowshoe hare. And then certainly our snowshoe hares are one of about 20 species in the entire world that transition to white in winter for camouflage. So definitely some differences, especially during the hunting season. Our snowshoe hares are going to be much more likely to be white and be easy to distinguish between the cottontail and the snowshoe hare. Really, for those more rare leopard species, the snowshoe hare and Appalachian cottontail, their habitat is going to be quite a bit different than the Eastern cottontail. Both snowshoe hares and Appalachian cottontail are going to be high elevation forest cover, pretty extensive forest, whereas our Eastern cottontail, they're going to be, your backyard, agricultural land is old reverting fields along kind of streams, those riparian type areas, anywhere where there's really high stem density, woody vegetation, especially up against like a cool season grass field, would be pretty ideal areas to find that eastern cottontail. Anything else that you guys find would be worth mentioning?
No, I think the only, and we briefly talked about it before we started the presentation, but like some of the nicknames that people give them, I've heard a lot of snowshoe hare hunters from the Pocono region call them jackrabbits, which they are not jackrabbits, but understandable because of big back legs and stuff like that.
Sure.
Big ears, but yeah, they go by a bunch of different names, but I was always worried that I was going to be accidentally harvesting Appalachian cottontails. Just because I think the species is really cool, but yeah, I hunt agricultural areas, so.
Yeah, much more likely in an agricultural setting to have eastern cottontail.
Right.
But yeah, our Appalachian cottontail, one of the tricky parts is what do you call it? Because there's mountain rabbit, there's wood rabbit, there's blue bellies, there's all kinds of different nicknames for that species, and it's just added to the difficulty with figuring out where we still have that species in Pennsylvania.
And to kind of assuage fears there, they are very hard to distinguish between visually, and they are not legally distinguished. So you're not going to get in trouble if you accidentally harvest an Appalachian.
Yeah, there's a
You probably wouldn't even know.
cottontail rabbit season.
Yeah.
And just so that we're all on the same page as we move forward, the information that we're going to be providing you is specific to basically cottontails.
Yeah, Eastern cottontails.
Yeah, we're not going to go over hares, things
No.
like that. So
Right.
we're focusing specifically on what we would traditionally call a rabbit. So
Yeah.
like the cottontail versus the snowshoe hare, just so everybody is on the same page as we move forward.
Yeah, there's a really cool hare hunting tradition in PA as well, but that's not what we're talking about. So
Next slide. And just, at the beginning of rabbit season every year, we put out a heads up. There is this rabbit hemorrhagic disease threat to all these species that I just was talking about, but also domestic rabbit as well. And that's actually one of the chief concerns. It spreads pretty readily between domestic and wild lagomorphs, leopards, rabbits and hares, sorry. And while we did have a detection in a domestic rabbit in 2022, fortunately that did not spread into the wild, which is great because that disease, it's pretty much been declared endemic. It's not going anywhere to Western states, and here in the East, you can see on the figure there, it's kind of jumped to different domestic rabbits, but fortunately hasn't spread to the wild. The disease has a very short incubation, so from that rabbit getting infected to actually showing signs, and likely very high mortality rate for this disease. And there's a vaccination bullet point here. It's not really feasible to vaccinate wild rabbits for this disease, but certainly that is something that the domestic rabbit world has taken up, which is very fortunate to help reduce the likelihood of spreading this disease. And probably most importantly, this disease is not zoonotic, which means that it is only going to be impacting your rabbits and hares. It does not spread to you. It does not spread to your dog. But really, we're continuing to monitor for this disease. And so if anyone were to observe 2 or more dead wild rabbits and hares from unknown cause, like roadkill, pretty common cause for mortality, we're not looking for that. This would be like just found dead on the landscape without any cause around the same time. We want to hear about that. And so that number there is provided in the bottom of the slide. Please just heads up. There's a disease that we're not yet finding in the wild in Pennsylvania, but it's definitely something we're monitoring for.
So there's some background about what we're talking about when we're talking about rabbits and some of the life history of them. So we'll just get right into hunting them. One of the first decisions you got to make when you're hunting anything is where I think I can find them. For rabbits, for the cottontails we're talking about, they prefer habitat that includes thick brushy areas close to browsing areas. So like Emily mentioned, thick stem density next to some type of browse for them. Normally herbaceous ground cover. They like clover. Field edges, wooded material like raspberry shoots, sapling buds. These normally grow in kind of early growth, like fields that maybe haven't been harvested in 2 or 3 years, left to fallow. Agricultural drainages, overgrown hedgerows, discarded woody debris like log piles or just treetops. Those are all great places to look for rabbits. They take shelter there during the day. Rabbits will also take cover in abandoned groundhog burrows. A lot of chases with dogs will end with them just barking into a hole that the rabbit has made its way back into. And that rabbit beats you for that day, unless you want to sit there and wait at the entry of that burrow. So, any thoughts on anything else?
I do happen to own a dog that's gotten rabbits out of a hole on at least 2 or 3 occasions. So like it can work for you. The one thing that I'll add there is like to not overlook woodlots. And I think that on a lot of hunting properties, you have a lot of different habitat that comes together, and for my money, that only makes things all the better when there is a variety there where there's some diversity in the habitat. But I probably find as many rabbits, if not more of them, in the woods as I do fields or other places. The common denominator there is cover. But a lot of woodlots have briars. There is a lot of cover in areas where there is storm damage or where trees intentionally have been dropped, where there are a lot of blowdowns. There are hot spots for rabbits. And, some of the nice things about hunting those places, if you get out onto a nice game lands or another public property, it's like you can just go because there's really rabbit habitat all around you. And if you look for them, you'll find them.
Yeah. And I just really these guys are both talking about habitat. That is what we're talking about when we're talking about rabbits. That's where you go to find it. You're looking for that habitat, that shrubby cover, that cover that'll be there for winter structurally. So even like a warm season grass field would be good. But up against those that browse area, that's really what you're looking for when you're looking for rabbits.
Yeah. And that sort of makes me think about the variety that's out there. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I was thinking today on my way in about a rabbit that we jumped last year that was in like sort of an open basin that had a lot of grass clumps and a lot of things on the edges, and you can find rabbits in any of it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The next one, it's kind of a continuation on some of these habitats that we're talking about. I really like Travis mentioned to not discount wooded areas. I think that's very important because I think most people do think about the agricultural areas, but I can guarantee you clear cuts it's nothing but a sea of raspberry or blackberry bushes. There's going to be rabbits in there. I've been in situations where I'm pushing through raspberry that's over my head and just jumping rabbits left and right. It's so thick I can't even pull up my gun. I'm just hoping that they go to the people I'm hunting with. But you're kicking them out of, just like Travis and Emily both said, cover near forage areas. So once you can identify it can take some time, but once you start to jump rabbits and get familiar with it, you get better and better at looking at an area and seeing where the rabbit will probably be holed up. So yeah, like on the slide, it says poorly drained woodlands. That's normally pretty thick areas. Gullies, like the agricultural drainages, just thick areas that are a little overgrown, that give them some cover, give them some security where they like to hole up. So yeah, scouting. A lot of people, I feel, discredit scouting as far as small game hunting goes. They think of scouting as, some of their big game species, turkey and deer, require scouting, but preseason planning is important for any successful harvest. So going into these areas, even in spring and summer, to see which areas are growing up thick, which areas are easily accessible or not easily accessible, and honestly, which areas are you seeing rabbits before season? I've came across state game lands where it's nothing but overgrown, old fields and you're kicking out rabbits every time you go in there. Now, I was scouting for deer, but you better believe I kept that in mind that in February I could come back there and I could try and harvest some of those rabbits from some of those thicker areas. So just don't discredit when you're out for deer, or if you're scouting for rabbits, do that preseason. Yeah, it doesn't have to be, you don't need to be walking in there blind. You can go out, look for those habitats before season and have an idea of what you're walking into.
Yeah, and I'll add to that rabbit sign can be tough to find. I think that if there's snow cover, that droppings show up a lot more. That's like pretty much the only scenario where you'll see tracks. When there is snow, you may see girdled trees and may see them extensively girdled trees. But a lot of times for me, and enjoy the benefit of hunting with dogs. If I see rabbit sign, that's encouraging. But I find a lot of rabbits in areas where I don't find sign too. Generally speaking, if there's cover there, you can find them.
And just to build on that, I can't tell you the number of calls from concerned hunters I've taken where there's no rabbits anymore. And it's often comes out that, they've been hunting the same area 10, 20 years, and that habitat has changed. It's just not the good rabbit habitat anymore. And that's likely where scouting out additional areas maybe nearby would be worth their time for sure.
Yeah. Habitat is always changing and you have to change with it. So if an area that used to be good for rabbits isn't anymore, you might want to be like, well, this 5-year-old field is now 20 years old and some of these trees are bigger and there's not as much ground cover. Well, that's probably hurting your chances of finding rabbits there. So, and if you're walking around, you go into kind of a swampy bottom full of red maple and you look at every trunk and it's chewed up, you better go back in there in February with your shotgun and try and fill a game pouch because you'll have a blast doing it. So yeah, we'll talk a little bit about what gear you need for hunting rabbits. First and foremost is, of course, a valid hunting license. That is a necessity for any legal hunting in Pennsylvania, or anywhere really. So, generally, people hunt rabbits with shotguns. Similar where you can hunt them with like a small caliber rifle, but generally when you jump a rabbit, it's moving pretty quick and it's not liable to slow down anytime soon. So most guys will hunt it with shotguns. Eye and ear protection. I understand that ear protection sometimes is hard, especially when you're communicating with other people in the hunting party. But eye protection, I would definitely strongly recommend. I just wear my glasses, like my eyeglasses. And not only just for you're handling firearms, but you're walking through some pretty dense cover, some pretty thick stuff, and you don't want to get poked in the eye. It's not comfortable, and it'll end your day early sometimes. So, the required orange. There's a graphic there. It's going to be a full orange hat and an orange vest. And then, small knife to clean your harvest. And optional there being trained dogs for rabbit hunting. In addition to what you carry or?
Well, the with eye and ear protection, and usually when I'm rabbit hunting, I don't wear either. But then what I've noticed is when hare hunting and hunting in young clear cuts, you definitely want eye protection because they're just those young sapling branches have a lot of spring in them, and that truly uncomfortable. But no, I think you hit all the points.
Yeah, I would recommend just wearing some type of eye protection anytime you're walking through thick stuff or in low visibility through the woods. Just out of an abundance of safety and protecting your eyes, they're pretty valuable. So.
I don't know exactly what the audience is here, but if there's new hunters, certainly, obviously you need your orange, but make sure, try to have a small game vest for that orange, a pocket to put your harvested rabbits in. It definitely comes in handy.
For sure. Yeah. They make like pretty specialized small game vests or just game pouches, some people call them. But yeah, like bright orange vest with pockets for your ammunition and a big pouch in the back to hold your harvest. So it's very nice, keeps your hands free. Um, pretty valuable.
And I just want to clarify, we're saying bright orange. There is a specific color orange that you need to be wearing, which is fluorescent orange. So it can't just be an orange vest. It has to be fluorescent. So just so everybody is aware and on the same page there.
Yeah, fluorescent orange, highly visible. So choosing a firearm, this with all firearm choices becomes highly opinionated, and it's genuinely comes out to be what's comfortable for you. The most common shotgun gauges, which is, if somebody knows what a caliber is, a gauge is the equivalent for shotguns. Common sizes range from 28 gauge, 20 gauge, 16 gauge, and 12 gauge. And then shot size from 4 to 7.5. But between 28 gauge and 12 gauge is great. I know people who hunt with 410s successfully, but the BB capacity is not very high. And so if you're in any dense cover or at any range, any distance, it's going to be less successful just by nature of the caliber there. Because 410 is a caliber, that gets confusing. And 10 gauge is larger than a 12 gauge, often seen as overkill for rabbits. Not to say there's nothing illegal about hunting rabbits with a 10 gauge, but it's often seen as overkill. I use that 16 gauge side by side pictured there. Just a sweet gun for me, and it kind of goes into what I was saying earlier, where the most important thing is how the gun feels to you. So I started hunting with a 20 gauge pump. That still is a sweet gun. I still have it and I use it sometimes. But it just feels extremely comfortable. When I pull the gun up to my shoulder, it's pointing exactly where I'm looking at. I never thought I would find a gun that was more comfortable to aim than that. And then I found the 16 gauge, and so now I use this. But as long as you're comfortable with that firearm, that's the most important choice. Any addition to that from you guys?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of the oddity, I think, among rabbit hunters in that I carry a 410 pistol. So I had moved over to carrying a pistol mostly when I was when my younger dogs were getting up to speed and they still weren't fully broken from running deer, and I sort of recognized that a hunt could turn into dog retrieval pretty quickly, and having both hands free would be a benefit to that. So I kind of went into started hunting with a pistol, not thinking that I'd like it or stick with it, and then ended up really liking not having to carry a long gun, especially when you're in the type of thick cover that we're talking about. So I'm able to keep my gun holstered in a bandolier holster, have both hands free. That enables me to carry a walking stick along whenever we're looking for rabbits, don't have one up and running. I can work the cover with a walking stick. It helps me to step up on logs and go up and down hills and all sorts of stuff, which as I get older, it's all the more important to have support. But so again, that's not for everybody. With my setup, I have some pretty limited range. And generally need them within 20 yards and more so around 15. Anything beyond 20 yards is a long shot for me with that gun. But that kind of lends to a lot of close encounters with rabbits, which I really like too, and probably some longer chases for the dogs when the rabbit comes by within what would usually be shotgun range, but is too far for me.
Yeah, and with Travis, with handling your dogs, that's definitely nice to have hands free for that. And you brought up the case in thick brush. That pistol's pretty handy. The 16 gauge pictured there, the barrel is pretty long on it, and so I do get into situations where I will try to pull up for a rabbit, and it will catch on vines or blackberry, and I just can't, you know. So you got to be aware of that as well, you know.
Yeah, and I think that's a distinction that's worth talking about a little bit more. It's sort of the difference in hunting rabbits and your shooting opportunities when you're talking about jump shooting them versus like shooting them as they're being chased by dogs. You know, with it, I don't think that I would be a very successful rabbit hunter as a jump shooter. And jumping rabbits is my favorite part of the deal. With beagles, everybody talks about the sound of the beagles and listening to the beagles and whatnot, and I like all of that too. And you're not having a good day if you're not experiencing that. But jumping rabbits, finding them in that's my favorite part of it. You know how you, Peyton, can jump a rabbit and acquire the target and make good on your shot. It's like I don't think that I'm quite there with it. Usually when the rabbit comes through being pursued by the dogs, it's well ahead of the dogs, hundreds of yards ahead of the dogs, and often coming through at a slow pace. And that's more my speed for them. So you know it is different if you're here today as a new rabbit hunter or a prospective rabbit hunter, and your opportunity is going to be to go out there by yourself and find rabbits, then it's different than what I'm talking about or what I go through on a typical hunt, because usually the rabbits are coming to me at the end of the day.
Yeah. Very good.
And before we move on, just so that everybody knows, if you're not familiar, because I know you guys are all new hunters, within your digest, for any game species that you're interested in hunting, within that section, Travis is looking at me like, no, maybe not. I was gonna say there is a section that it says arms and ammunition for each of that, and it will outline what you can legally use for that game species during season. So if this is a lot of information for you, I know we've given you some recommended sizes, but if you want to know what is actually legal, please refer to your digest. It is outlined in there. And if all of this talk and stuff is confusing you about gauges and gauge sizes, I would highly recommend, if you have not already, to take a hunter education course. Gauges are covered a little bit more in depth about the difference between sizes and things like that. So I say that if you want to purchase a hunting license in Pennsylvania, you have to take a hunter education course or be participating on a mentored hunting permit. So just be aware of that. But if you need more information on gauges, hunter education is a good place to start.
Awesome. So yeah, and this kind of goes to what Travis was saying about the differences with how people hunt rabbits. So growing up, I pretty much kicked brush with my family. So small game hunting parties are limited to 6 individuals per party. We had beagles, but they were not well trained and well ran beagles. So they were kind of there to be our friends and just kind of hang around. They didn't run rabbits as well as a good pack of beagles did. So basically, all our shots that we got were jump shooting, and the dogs were there to have a good time. So basically, you just find areas where you think there are rabbits. We covered that earlier. Thick areas adjacent to agricultural fields. We tended to go more agricultural just because it's easier to maintain communication and visual eye contact with each other in more open areas. But you walk in a straight line and kind of push out the area. In Fulton County, it's the southern end of the Ridge and Valley region, so there's kind of thick and pretty steep hollers there. So we would post up along it and push it out. It's important to note you're only shooting within your zone of fire, which is about a 45-degree triangle kind of directly in front of you. So there's a bunch of ways people try and tell you to figure out where your zone of fire is. but it's pretty much if you have a ball cap on the sides of the brim of the hat, if you just shot those straight out, that would be your zone of fire. So you don't want to shoot outside that zone of fire because you have your hunting party next to you, and you don't even want to think about shooting close to them, right? So as far as actually making contact with the rabbit when you shoot, you're going to do something they call leading the rabbit, which is basically the rabbit is moving pretty quickly. Your shotgun shot when you fire will move faster than the rabbit, but there is a little bit of a lag there. So you're going to aim in front of the rabbit when you fire. You're going to continue moving with the rabbit, fire, and continue that swing. It might take a little bit to get used to it, but if you do it enough, it becomes second nature. Generally, when shooting at a rabbit that's really moving, if you're thinking about where to shoot, you're already kind of too late for that rabbit. So you just will develop a sense of feel for where the barrel needs to be, judging the rate of speed of the rabbit and firing when applicable. When we jump a rabbit, especially in a party, because you can kick brush solo too, and it can be very successful. But if you're hunting in a party and you jump a rabbit, you want to make sure that you let the other hunters know that you just saw a rabbit. So normally we say, "There he goes." That's what our family always said. So you'd hear from down the line, "There he goes," and then you'd hear, Pate run into you, or you run into wherever. And you would know to, hold up, wait, look for movement, and make sure you identify the rabbit coming through and make a ethical shot on it. So I will say, with that experience thing I have here, and I feel it's important to note, I have a much higher success rate shooting at rabbits than I do clay birds on a range. I think it just comes from adrenaline and doing it often, that I am much better at shooting running rabbits than I am at a clay bird, which should be an easier target because it's less erratic movement. But I think you do develop just kind of a sense of what you're doing. You get to be pretty successful at it. So.
Yeah, I think that when it comes to shooting running rabbits, and I don't miss them all, the the shotgun fit plays into it largely. If you have a shotgun that doesn't fit you well, your chances of hitting a running target, especially, certainly will decrease. So shotgun fit means something like factors into it in a big way. What Peyton said about leading the target is good advice. To acquire that target, put the bead on it, swing through the rabbit, get in front of the rabbit, pull the trigger, and then wait and see. I'll tell you this much: when rabbits are really moving, running just about as fast as they can go, there's a great sense of accomplishment in hitting that target, and it can be the end to a great chase in my case. Oh, it's me. Well, we're looking at one of my beagles there. That's Eddie. Is his full name still listed on there?
I haven't.
Well, thanks for taking that off. But no, with hunting with hounds, usually when I go out with my dogs, the dogs are ready to go. They're often barking on the way to the hunting location. We get there, I get ready, I turn them loose, and they're pretty well behaved dogs in that if we're walking a trail in, they're generally obedient in following me in. If we're dropping the tailgate in a spot where we can start hunting immediately, they just go off and we're all looking for rabbits. So the finding the rabbit is the sort of job one. when with hunting with dogs, because other than that you're just seeking. Some days are better than others for whatever reasons. Some days you have a hard time finding them. Some days you can't get away from them. But I'd mentioned before that jumping a rabbit is my favorite part of hunting with dogs, and some of that has to deal with how excited they get. Like Peyton had said about jumping a rabbit when hunting without dogs and with a group, to holler and let the others know that there is a rabbit up. So when I jump a rabbit, all I do is yell rabbit, and immediately the dogs fire up and come into the spot. And oftentimes they're so excited it takes them maybe a minute to settle down enough to get on the track and to begin to run the track. So that's I get a huge kick out of that, watching them, and maybe another favorite thing of mine is when the dogs themselves jump a rabbit, or have the chance to see the rabbit for themselves and chase the rabbit right behind the rabbit's tail. You don't get to see that very often outside of on a Beagle Club hunting cap. So yeah, the sounds of the beagles as they do their work, when you have a rabbit up and going, all bets are off for how long the chase is going to last. You're hoping that the rabbit, as it goes out, turns around and circles back your way. Some days where, for whatever reasons, the rabbits that you jump will tend to want to hole up quickly. So you don't get that circle, or you have to, continue to find additional rabbits, continue to put the work in, to hope that you find that rabbit that wants to run. But ultimately, it's up to them. The rabbits are really the biggest factor. They're the most in charge as to whether you and your dogs are having a good day. But when the dogs get on that rabbit, circle that rabbit. I've had chases last for an hour. I've had chases last for 4 hours. Usually when they last that long, there's a lot of the story that I don't want to tell, with like how many times I've missed, or like all of the mishaps that kind of roll into that's rabbit hunting. But yes, the rabbits, when they have their mind made up that they don't want to go underground, that they'll run until something stops them. So to be ready to shoot, I think that's in hunting with dogs, I always feel a little bit of pressure because I want to perform for them. So in my experience, that's a good thing, where it only helps you to stay focused, to be aware of your surroundings. It doesn't take much for a rabbit to get past you. Sometimes not only, it's not even like a rare occasion. It happens quite often where a rabbit will get by you and you have no idea how. The dogs come through, you can see the dogs. How did you not see the rabbit? You're turned that direction, you're looking that way. They're not really big. So that plays into it. But it's all part of the fun and all part of the reward.
Yeah, I would say if anybody ever gets a chance to hunt rabbits over hounds, I would definitely take it. Going to what Travis was saying about rabbits circling back and you not noticing them, that also means that the dogs will be coming in and you will be looking for a rabbit that has already passed. So one of the, if not the most important thing I can stress in this presentation is identify your target before you even pull up your gun. These dogs are working for you, and you should treat their safety as least as important as the other hunters in your party. So identify your target before raising your gun, and certainly identify your target before firing.
Yeah, and I can add to that too, that no two rabbit chases are exactly alike. So we talk about ones that are long and ones that are short, and the rabbit can be close to the dogs or far out in front of the dogs. So yeah, the safety of the dogs is catamount in all of that.
So awesome. Yep. So you have been so far successful and you have harvested a rabbit. Um, Fantastic. So the equipment you'll need to process that rabbit, um, protective gloves, rubber gloves like that, a sharp, small knife. Um, some people use shears. You don't really need shears if you just use your knife correctly. And then freezer bags or freezer paper. Uh, Included there is instructions for field dressing a rabbit. I won't go through them step by step just because that would be redundant. You guys can read them. I will say rabbit skin is incredibly easy to separate from the meat, especially when freshly killed. If you can skin it as soon as convenient, it'll be much easier for you. That's a lot easier when you are the only one hunting because you can take the time to gut and skin the rabbit without inconveniencing anybody else. If you're in a big party, that's likely not going to happen. But I will say I would recommend getting the guts out of the rabbit as soon as possible. They can degrade pretty quickly and can make it a more olfactory experience later when you're gutting them. So my great grandfather was known to harvest the rabbit, immediately gut it, wrap it in newspaper, and then put it in his pouch. That was because he was a neat freak and he didn't want to get blood on his pouch, so he'd wrap it in newspaper before he stuffed it in there. So there is a video link there to a YouTube video on processing a rabbit. We can include that in the description of the video, the comments later. So you guys will have a link to that video that I found very helpful. Before every season, I just kind of rewatch it just as a refresher on how to process it. And so.
If I might just chime in, thinking back to that rabbit hemorrhagic disease, the virus that causes that disease remains in muscle tissue of that animal for quite some time, and so can be on the landscape if you're field dressing for quite some time. So thinking ahead, we don't have that in the wild yet, but kind of best practice that we recommend at this time is to, if you're ever dressing, whenever you take that hide off, try to dispose in commercial trash is actually a really good option. Burning it, but just leaving it on the landscape. It's also probably unlikely eventually when we do get this virus that you'll be harvesting an animal with the disease, just because the mortality rate is quite high. But just thinking ahead to how you're disposing of that animal, commercial trash for an animal this size is a pretty good option often. So just be thinking about that as well.
Good note. Right. Awesome. So you have processed the animal. It is now down to meat and bones. What do you do then? So rabbits have been eaten historically by many cultures. I mean, many cultures have like traditional rabbit recipes. Not as common as a lot of protein options in the modern United States, but like I said, my family growing up and generations past, they ate a lot of rabbit. It's well suited to like the low and slow braising stew recipes. I do most of my rabbits in stews or like hot pie situations, but it can be a chicken analog if you just want to do like fried rabbit legs. There's another link there that we'll include in what we send out to rabbit recipes. I don't know if you guys have any tips on cooking rabbit.
Yeah, for my money, rabbit's a good chicken substitute. I just made a batch of rabbit corn soup, identical to chicken corn soup. With a lot of that anymore, where I'm cooking meat off the bone, I will pressure cook it, which gets the meat perfect. But anywhere that you have a bone that's broken or splintered, rabbit bones are extremely hard, and that's a big difference between rabbit and chicken. If you leave a chicken bone behind in a bowl of soup, it's no big deal. Rabbit bone, you're going to feel. So, I try to be as particular as I can, both when I'm processing that and then when I'm getting it ready to add to the dish. I also often will bone out my loins on rabbit. Like after I quarter the rabbit, put it in brine. I'll keep it in brine for at least a day, sometimes several days, and then at some point prepare that meat. Take the loins off the back, which is whole at that point, and then those loins are good to like throw into a stir fry. And anywhere where you're looking for boneless meat, you have like a nice strip of boneless meat in those loins. And then also, oftentimes I'll bone out my hind legs and take that meat. And again, some of it, if you have a broken back leg or something like that, there can be a lot of splintering in that bone that you want to get that out of your food. But I grind a lot of that meat that I bone out, and it's like on the season you're generally looking at 12 pounds of burger on the year. So that's a good way to use rabbit meat too. Like in a lot of dishes, it tastes very similar to other burger products. It's all a good way to make good use of the resource.
And I will say, I think a lot of people who are not used to eating wild game find rabbit more approachable than others. Like a lot of rabbit hunters will harvest squirrel as well. Most people who are not used to eating wild game meat are not comfortable with the idea of eating squirrel, but will try rabbit. Like I said, it's just a cultural thing. It's been eaten historically by almost every culture that has rabbits, so it's kind of easier to accept for some people. So yeah, that kind of concludes the presentation so far. I mean, we took it from scouting to actual hunting, harvesting, processing, and cooking. Um, so at this point, we'll look to chat. Any questions that you have for us about rabbit hunting, any aspects of that, or in general, rabbit biology, anything like that. So.
Yeah, so the first question that we got on here says, do rabbits run a distance after being shot like deer do, or do they lay down immediately?
Generally, they roll. If you shoot them at a pretty good rate of speed, you shoot them, they'll just tuck up and tumble. They'll pretty much be dead right where you shot them. I've had very few instances where somebody I've been hunting with shot one and it ran off, but there was an actual blood trail, and then it was kind of like trailing a deer. But that's pretty rare. Normally, if you get a good bit of BBs in them, they'll fold up pretty much right where you shot them. So.
And I can add to that too. It certainly can happen, and mentioned earlier about with a 410, 7.5 size shot. That's a good fit for my setup. But rabbits can run after being hit. Like if I think that a lot of times you're probably looking at getting a pellet or a relatively low number of pellets, like maybe into a lung. And it's because the reaction is very similar to a deer that's hit with an arrow. There's impact, it runs off, and then usually that, in my experience, has been within 20-30 yards till the rabbit expires. But yeah, they can definitely run a little bit and expire, but I don't think that that's the normal scenario. Usually they drop on the spot. There's it ordinarily doesn't take many pellets to do in a rabbit.
No, the only time I've ever had to trail a rabbit was actually somebody harvested with a 410. So.
Jason asked, does the shot have to be lead free like waterfowl?
No, legally it does not have to be lead free. That's legally. The lead free shot does have wildlife benefits. Just be sure the gun you're shooting it out of. Like I do not shoot lead free out of my gun because it is very old steel. And so the steel shot that are in those steel cartridges might actually be harder steel than the barrel of my gun. And so it might damage it. There's also tungsten and bismuth options. But bismuth 16 gauge is kind of prohibitively expensive for me. But if you have access to lead-free shot, by all means, you can use it, but it's not a legal requirement like waterfowl. That's just due to biological differences.
And I think that Peyton makes a good point there, and especially that we're talking about what might be new hunters or new rabbit hunters, that oftentimes that we as new hunters get hand-me-down gear. So when you're talking about a firearm and potentially an old firearm, it's like it's always good practice to involve a gunsmith and allow them to check over your firearm, make sure that it's safe. If we're talking about ammunition choice or other things you might be thinking about, to have a gunsmith in as part of that conversation.
For sure.
Okay, so I think that might be all the questions we got. As I am closing up here, if somebody else has a question, feel free to stick it in the chat and we'll get to it before we wrap up. But just some things here on the slides. The Learn to Hunt Pheasant program, already done. We had put that in here whenever we thought we were going to host this a little bit earlier in the year. But the Learn to Hunt Squirrel programs is happening on October 5th in Franklin, PA. If you're anywhere near that, that is an in-person program. So it's actually going to be hands-on. So if that's something that you're interested in, there is more information on that link right there on our Learn to Hunt page. In addition, if you are new to hunting, if you go to our YouTube page or if you go to our website and look up Learn to Hunt, we have a variety of these webinars going back for a couple years now that we have done. So we have deer archery, we have deer firearms, we have turkey, we have pheasant, three-part waterfowl series, dove. I don't know if I'm missing any. I think that's most of it. A squirrel one.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we have a variety of webinars that are introductory for a variety of different species. So feel free to check those out as well. And yeah.
I mean, if you're interested in learning to hunt rabbits, I would say please look into learning to hunt squirrels. Different but similar. I mean, there are dogs involved in some squirrel hunts as well, different breed feists, but super delicious, super fun to hunt. I mean, I think a lot of people get into hunting squirrels. So, yeah, if you're interested in this, you should also be interested in that.
Okay. So just as we wrap up here and as we hop off, I just want to say thank you to Travis, Emily, and Peyton for doing this presentation today and sharing your knowledge with everybody. Greatly appreciated. And also, just so that everybody knows, this has been recorded. We will send an email out afterwards with a link to the recording. It will probably not be until next week. Just as a heads up, we send out a lot of email blasts as an agency, so we don't want to overwhelm people with too many emails at once. So it'll probably be sometime next week that will be sent out to everybody. Okay, so be looking out for that, and we hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.